bottom line, we got, this needs to make money, for the contractor. It needs to make money. It needs to make sense. Um, we said a lot of great things, but what would you say ultimately like helps save money for the contractor by having this machine in their lineup?
So fatigue is a big one for me. As I've gotten older, fatigue is a big one, and you'll see quality of sanding go off. A lot of times the guy will look at his schedule for the week and he's already tired on Monday, and he's
Yeah.
Friday. So, and then where it makes money to me, both just in the quality of the job, but then really in the callbacks, because you're just going to limit so much edging, and so much of what I've classified kind of as the hard sanding is typically done at the end of a job. You get in with your belt sander, you do the sand, but then you've got to blend your edger work and all that together with the buffer. That's kind of at the end of a day or towards the end of a job. All the hard sanding is taking place up front. So once you're kind of tired and worn out, it sort of solves a lot of that problem. So the callback side, speed wise, it's a wash in my opinion. It's a it might take you a little bit longer on this cut, but it's going to take you less time on this cut. So it's kind of a wash overall.
Sure.
So the callbacks is one big way. And the other way that I didn't think of, because it wasn't really in my market, but a contractor out of Philadelphia, he said that he turns down 2 small jobs a week in inner city Philadelphia because he just physically can't figure out how to get guys down there to sand this 1 bedroom with the belt sander and all that equipment. He's like, I can put this 1 machine in the minivan and send 1 guy down there to do it. He's like, the work I'm looking for, I'm turning these jobs away on a regular basis. So for him, his eyes just lit up when he saw the machine. And that, I never thought of that, because it's not something back there. They put a lot of thresholds in between hallways and bedrooms, so you can just sand 1 bedroom at a time. It's not a big Denver, but that small job thing, and then ultimately being able to split a crew. If you can send 1 guy to start sanding here, and 1 guy can go do a final coat. You don't have to feel bad about a guy lugging his belt sander up, a flight of stairs to get started on a sand. He's hauling in his 88-pound machine and his weights, and he can start sanding. So splitting up smaller companies, I see being a real, once they kind of develop the schedule, and I see that really a big snowball effect on that, and just being able to get to more physical job sites and get here, which is what we all.
Yeah, no, definitely. It's definitely a kind of like a work smarter, not necessarily a harder type tool that you can use for sure. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. So my name's RJ Smala. I'm territory manager for Pallmann here in the Rocky Mountain region, New Mexico, Colorado, and Wyoming. Do a little bit of work in Southern California as well. Been with Pallmann for 5 years, and was owned my own company for 24 years previous to that. So it's a nice transition off the floors, but stay in the business.
Sure, absolutely. Save your back and your knees a little bit.
Little bit. It's added to my stomach, though. I will say that. So.
Well, I'm sure we can all understand that, especially this time of the year when we're getting closer to Thanksgiving and Christmas, where it just gets colder, and you don't want to move as much. But all right, well, let's just dive right into it. All right, so we're talking about the Pallmann Spider today. It is a wonderful new machine. And RJ, could you briefly describe what is the Pallmann Spider?
So the Pallmann Spider is an addition to the Planetary sanding world. Technology's been around for a while, and it's ever evolving, and the Spider is kind of an evolution in that realm. And I think the big difference for us is that we've added some aggression to the front of the machine, so that it is a little bit stronger capability in sanding raw wood floors or taking off finish. And basically, by our orbits are the same direction, whereas most are counter orbiting each other or free orbiting. They're where ours is chain driven in the same direction. So it kind of similar concept of a horizontal or planetary sanding, and that's kind of where the device is. It's an evolving field. So that's how we fit into the market.
Sweet. So you were mentioning it's a planetary sander. For those of us who might not know what that is or want some clarification, what would you say is a planetary sander as opposed to just a buffer, for instance?
So some guys describe it as horizontal sanding. So our machine actually looks very much like a buffer. The machine itself weighs 88 pounds. The planetary action is when you put satellite discs underneath it that are either driven themselves, either gear driven or chain driven, or in some cases they're randomly orbiting, whereas this true buffer is the single disc orbiting in its one plane. That's kind of the difference of Planetary is we're putting, in our case, we put 3 7-inch discs on the underneath the machine. So it's still sanding in that 16-inch format, but we have 3 discs rotating inside of the larger orbit as well.
Okay, so like each disc is spinning on its own as it's spinning around the entire way, correct?
Yep.
Gotcha. Okay. Awesome. So this is a relatively new product from you guys, correct?
Yeah, here in the US, it's we've been for sale for a little over a year. We introduced it at NWFA in Dallas, and then went actually for sale last summer. So it's been about a year. We've been working with it here. I've been working with it personally here in the US for about 3 years, kind of adapting the European means of sanding to sort of the American style of sanding. So we've had it here in one form or another for about 3 years, and it's been live for sale. It's been in Europe for sale for 5, 6 years already, and in some form of development for closer to 10 actually. So.
Oh wow, okay. Nice. How would you describe, and you said this came from the European market and like their style of sanding. Uh how is their sanding different from like US sanding method wise?
Well, the biggest thing over there is that they have a lot of misdirection floors, a lot of
Okay.
herringbones and chevrons, a lot of parquet. And so they don't deal with a lot of plank wood like we deal with here, 5-inch wide, 8-foot long boards.
Right.
So it's over there, the horizontal system or the scratch that a horizontal machine or Planetary machine leaves is actually less than what a belt sander leaves, because they're going to be going cross grain a lot of the time just because of their general layouts of the floors. And whereas here we're dealing with mostly a stripped wood, and so our belt sanding is designed to go directionally, the scratches go directionally with the wood. So it was a change there, kind of fundamentally from both the way that I sanded for 25 years and just conceptually. So that's the main difference between Europe and the US.
Oh, okay, gotcha. Oh, good to know. So we've already kind of spoken a few things already, but what would you say is the best features about the Spider specifically? Like where does it really just like shine, and where does it really just come out and like really just do its job really well?
So, I mean, it's kind of a 2-step answer. The first thing that kept me intrigued about it was the ability to take out so much edging. Any edging space, closets, kitchen blocks, long hallways that go cross grain, anywhere where a belt sander couldn't fit. That's where I saw it originally fitting in and just taking over a lot of that. Ultimately, the machine was too expensive to be sold as that, and it has more capability than that. So I have not sanded now with the belt sander in 3 years. So all the sanding I've done, both at our training facility and literally hundreds of job sites, has been with the Spider start to finish. So, and the biggest challenge in Planetary is that our sandpaper is in constant contact with the surface. So it generates a little bit more heat than a belt sander, and it will load up on paper. And that's kind of one of the things we're fighting right now. We've formed a really, really close partnership with Norton to deal with the abrasive side of it, because I kind of describe it as we've got a car we don't have all the tires for.
Right.
The capability of the machine, and then ultimately the machine weighs 88 pounds. So for a soloist, or if you're going upstairs, stuff like that, it just fits into that system automatically. And then over the years that I've been sort of doing the R&D on it, it's just developed into a machine where I'm like, if Pallmann let me go today, I would buy a Spider and I would sand start to finish with it. That's how it would fit into my van.
Okay.
And so, like I said, that was the original interest, and now where it's developed.
Gotcha. So really with, especially as we start doing possibly some more like herringbone and parquet type floors, it does really shine there, but also just getting closer to walls, so you don't have to edge as much. Now, knowing that not everybody does those types of floors, even though everybody does edge, how does a machine like this really fit into your equipment lineup? Is it just a niche tool that you only use for a couple occasions, or where do you think it really fits into like an equipment lineup?
So, I mean, each contractor is going to kind of make their own judgments there. I do have several contractors that will bring a belt sander in first, cut the finish off, and then they'll go, 2 steps with the Spider. Like I say, I'm sanding start to finish. I haven't brought it in. the reduction in edging is so significant for any closet. We're getting to about 3/4 of an inch from the wall. So we're cutting the edging down by about 85, 90%, which means your edging is going to get a lot better because you're doing a lot less of it. So, I mean, in our line, because we do still sell 3-belt sanders, we have not brought over our buffer yet. We just, you know, perfectly honest, we can't compete price-wise on the buffer. So for me, I'm using this machine start to finish at this point. I've brought in a buffer a couple of times to put down to help with our magic oil, our penetrating finish. And that's basically because we are tied to a 220 plug for our exit point. So it's not always appropriate to get out of the house with this, although I've done a couple of magic oil jobs with the Spider, and the variable speed action actually is really beneficial there, because that's one of the big features in this machine too, that we can spin it from 80 to 400 RPMs on the primary orbit. And then I'm not smart enough to know the math of how fast the small discs are going. I'm not that smart, but so we can vary the speed both for aggression and for pure control. But again, so in my van, if I was setting up a van, this would be the primary piece of equipment. A belt sander would be a very secondary piece of equipment for very large rooms, things like that. So that's how it would fit into my lineup. You're still running an edger, just very minimally. And I do have a couple of guys that are doing their edges with like a Festool Rotex now, because that small. I still think the edger is probably more efficient there. So
Gotcha. So it doesn't really like replace anything specifically, but it really kind of covers a whole lot.
Adding a second crew, this is going to be your primary piece of equipment, because everybody's already got a belt sander on their van. We've got a buffer on our van already. So if you're working into that same crew, like I say, the belt sander would spend a lot more time sitting on the floor in my garage, because I would only be pulling it for specific jobs. So it is kind of I would say it's just a new sanding piece of equipment altogether.
Sure. Gotcha. So let's talk about the versatility of the machine itself. I mean, obviously you got the Planetary sanding setup with 3 7-inch discs. Can you just put a normal buffer plate on it if you just wanted to, use a buffer plate, for instance? Would that work?
Yep. So the machine comes with, out of the box, it comes with the triple disc head, and it comes with a 16-inch head. I personally, just because of my years of experience, I still prefer to finish with the 16-inch head. That's just this is my natural comfort zone. But yes, it does come with that. And then ultimately for intercoat abrasion, you would be, the triple disc is really a little bit too aggressive for the intercoat abrasion. So we would be doing that with the single disc head. So, Yep. And you can run anything within a regular American clutch. So I've got some guys with the 6-disc multi-heads that run that as well. That's what they're comfortable with as their final pass. So anything with that type of American clutch will fit on it, just like a regular buffer.
Gotcha. Is there any other uses you could use the Spider for? I know you've got, you mentioned that it's got variable speeds on it, so you can do the Planetary sanding, you can buffer if you want to, or a bit of different head. Can you do like subfloor prep, or like can you grind concrete with it, for instance?
Yep, that's actually a great point. Subfloor prep, you can run, either an open grit piece of paper or a copper disc. And then on the concrete side, the motor and the electronics are actually pulled from a concrete grinder in our Wolf Tools lineup. So that has been around for a long time. And then we have a device called a Ninja plate, which is a buffer plate that you can interchange the segments on, anywhere from adhesive removal to concrete grinding. More of a scarification for an epoxy, that type of scenario. If you're actually trying to flatten a high seam or something, you need a little bit more contact space with the floor, and ultimately you'd want to turn probably to a wet grinding scenario. But as far as concrete scarification, adhesive removal, that type of stuff, that's really what it was kind of its birthplace. And then the sanding side, we took the electronics and the motor and everything from that side, changed the sanding distance. So it's for a guy that does some, I'm out of Colorado, so we don't deal with a ton of glue down, but in my career, you deal with 2-3 a year. To be able to prep that concrete properly with a piece of equipment you already own is a really big feature. So
gotcha. So you could really like go into a job, put a different plate on your Spider, get your subfloor prepped and ready to go with one machine, go back, install, and then put it on there again, and then do your sanding sequence, and then buff it all the way to your final coat. That's great.
Yes.
Now, with all the different things that it can do, would you say, is there much of like a learning curve? I know guys are always hesitant to trying something new. You stick to what you know because you know what the outcome is going to be. Is there, is there any like learning curves for this machine, or is it pretty easy to work with?
So it's very easy to work with. I would say like anything else, like the first day you get your new car, it's a little different to drive. Very
Sure,
similar to that. There's, we've tried to shorten the learning curve. We've done a lot of the research. We've taken a lot of the variables out of it. Guys will adapt to that system. But one of the comments that I get from guys is we're, as Pallmann, we're very committed to getting this machine on job sites. We want guys to demo. We want them to run it. It's a very large investment, and we want them. We don't want to sell it to them. We want them to buy it because they see the value in it. So we get it on job sites. And one of the comments that I get all the time from guys is just like, the end of their first job, they're like, that's the best job I've done in 18 years of doing this for a living. I hear that on a regular basis. So the learning curve is pretty quick. And then ultimately for new guys coming into the trade, which I think across the, my whole territory at least, is probably the most valuable entity. If we can get some new guys into the field, it's the learning curve is much quicker than say a belt sander. In the end, you could make a floor not perfect with the Spider, but you really can't ruin it. Whereas a big machine, you drop it into a heater band or just try to run it your first day, you're you're doing damage to the floor. So the learning curve is like dramatically quicker than that. So
gotcha. Is there? I mean, since it is a bigger machine, I know maintenance is always a concern. Is it relatively easy to maintain? Is there anything that you have to really, does the contractor have to buy a bunch of extra parts to begin with, or does it pretty much ready to go out of the box?
Machine comes out of the box ready to use. You hook it up to an external vacuum. Any external vacuum works great. 1.5 inch hose, so that's all set up ready to sand with. Maintenance wise, the main thing that we ask guys is to make sure you're blowing off the triple head every day, because it is a gear driven and chain driven device, and that dust over time will heat up and build up on there. So that is probably the most important thing to do maintenance wise. My personal machine that I carry in my van on a daily basis and lend out to contractors, it's on a job site right now sanding. All I've done to that machine maintenance wise, other than blowing the dust head off, was there's a little fuse that's to protect against power surge. The machine comes with one extra fuse in it, and that can blow on a job site. It's a $2 part, and it takes about 10 seconds to replace. That's literally in 2 years. That's all I've done for maintenance on my machine. And the you will have to the chain will have to tighten. It's one bolt, and you slide a little cog over, and it's super simple. Could you break the machine? Yeah, sure, you can do it. It's a machine, and guys will do damage to it. But general maintenance wise, I would say at this point, less than a belt sander.
Gotcha. Okay, cool. So you mentioned that like you really want guys to try this machine out. You don't want them just to buy it because of a good sales pitch or just because they're, even though it's a great product and it does have a lot of great benefits, you want them to really try it out and like really just want to have it before they actually buy it. You would prefer to like go out and like demo it and that kind of stuff?
I mean, we're very committed to that because this is a machine that is starting to cross some boundaries. And I have Pallmann on my shirt, so I'm not going to come out and be like, yeah, no, it's a pretty good machine. I'm going to tell you it's a great machine. In the end, like I say, we're not trying to sell you the machine. We would love you to buy it because it proves its own value. Once contractors get it and the contractor talks to a contractor, that's going to kind of take care of itself. But for right now, we are very committed, both myself, Gene Jarka, who handles you guys through the Midwest, and Trevor Martin, who does Texas, Oklahoma, and Alabama for you guys, or excuse me, Arkansas for you guys. We're very committed to getting it on job sites. It's what we prefer to do. We all have contracting backgrounds. We'll come out, get you started with the machine, and then we'll, a lot of times when appropriate, we'll leave it in your hands to finish the job with. And that's the best sales pitch, where we let it talk for itself. And we're, we understand that this machine is starting to cross some boundaries that existed in the industry. So we're really committed as Pallmann to get it in guys' hands. So, I mean, this is the second job site mine's been on this week. So,
Gotcha. That's awesome. Yeah. So just kind of like, I mean, let's get on to the nitty gritty. Like, bottom line, we got, this needs to make money, for the contractor. It needs to make money. It needs to make sense. we said a lot of great things, but what would you say ultimately like helps save money for the contractor by having this machine in their lineup?
So fatigue is a big one for me.
Okay.
As I've gotten older, fatigue is a big one, and you'll see quality of sanding go off. A lot of times the guy will look at his schedule for the week and he's already tired on Monday, and he's
Yeah.
Friday. So, and then where it makes money to me, both just in the quality of the job, but then really in the callbacks, because you're just going to limit so much edging, and so much of what I've classified kind of as the hard sanding is typically done at the end of a job. You get in with your belt sander, you do the sand, but then you've got to blend your edger work and all that together with the buffer. That's kind of at the end of a day or towards the end of a job. All the hard sanding is taking place up front. So once you're kind of tired and worn out, it sort of solves a lot of that problem. So the callback side, speed wise, it's a wash in my opinion. It's a it might take you a little bit longer on this cut, but it's going to take you less time on this cut. So it's kind of a wash overall.
Sure.
So the callbacks is one big way. And the other way that I didn't think of, because it wasn't really in my market, but a contractor out of Philadelphia, he said that he turns down 2 small jobs a week in inner city Philadelphia because he just physically can't figure out how to get guys down there to sand this 1 bedroom with the belt sander and all that equipment. He's like, I can put this 1 machine in the minivan and send 1 guy down there to do it. He's like, the work I'm looking for, I'm turning these jobs away on a regular basis. So for him, his eyes just lit up when he saw the machine. And that, I never thought of that, because it's not something back there. They put a lot of thresholds in between hallways and bedrooms, so you can just sand 1 bedroom at a time. It's not a big thing in Denver, but that small job thing, and then ultimately being able to split a crew. If you can send 1 guy to start sanding here, and 1 guy can go do a final coat. You don't have to feel bad about a guy lugging his belt sander up a flight of stairs to get started on a sand. He's hauling in his 88-pound machine and his weights, and he can start sanding. So splitting up smaller companies, I see being a real, once they kind of develop the schedule, and I see that really a big snowball effect on that, and just being able to get to more physical job sites and get here, which is what we all.
Yeah, no, definitely. It's definitely a kind of like a work smarter, not necessarily harder type tool that you can use for sure. Yeah,
absolutely.
Well, is there anything else specifically that you want to talk about the Spider, other than the questions I had for you today, in terms of anything that stands out that you want to mention about it at all? Or
hopefully you believe me and you enjoy the talk. Would love to show it to you. Like I say, I was a contractor for a long time. I didn't want to change my ways for a long time. It's very ingrained in us. I understand it. We understand it. The machine is really starting to see its own success. It's starting to build on its own. I'm a firm believer that in this industry, not just Pallmann, but in this industry across all the manufacturing, this is the direction the site finished world is going to go. This is either going to be sanded completely this way, or definitely done in addition. There's so many advantages to it. And I think if guys don't take a serious look at this type of sanding, they're going to be left behind pretty quick. And just because the quality, the dust control, all the other advantages to it. But I firmly believe, and I said this at NWFA when we launched it, you can watch the guys can watch an embarrassing video of me on YouTube if they want to look it up. But I said my firm belief is that more square footage will be sanded this way within the next 5 years than with a belt sander. I think this is, we've seen this kind of coming. I think the Spider has taken us to a place now where belt sanders are, it's the beginning of the end for them.
Gotcha. Okay. Wow.
So it's a big, bold statement, but I firmly believe it. So.
Gotcha. Cool. Well, just to kind of quickly recap everything for everybody who's either joined late or just want a nice quick summary. RJ's here to talk about the Pallmann Spider. It's a new planetary sander that uses 7-inch discs in a way to flatten a floor in a planetary style. Has a lot of great benefits and uses to it. It won't quite eliminate everything in the lineup, but you can definitely use it from low grits all the way through high grits. And it can potentially add a great value to your system, to your equipment. Actually, one quick I did remember, use a 7-inch disc on the Spider, correct? Is that the same as your edger disc?
Yes. Yeah. We wanted to stay in the common size. Okay. So both our edger, which is called the Gecko, is a 7-inch. The standard B2s and Super 7s are 7-inch. We are a hook and loop setup, but we were eliminating the amount of clutter in the van was also a major thought process with us. And the glancing in your van and just having to look for, you know, one set of papers was also a big feature. That's why we really stayed to that 7-inch size. It was hard to fit all of those underneath there and get all that fit into the 7-inch space and keep it at the weight that we wanted it. But it was really important to us because it's just more convenient for guys in their van. And ultimately, clutter and floor space in the van that's prime real estate. So
it is.
So not having to carry the belts, not having to carry, you know, 2-3 different sizes of paper has been really that's a big benefit.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Gotcha. Well, great. Another, you know, hidden benefit that's a part of the machine, other than making use for subfloor prep. You know, you can use it for, you know, concrete scarifying if you want to. You know, pretty easy to use and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, well, RJ, thank you for coming on today, for being part of this Pro Shop Talk and, you know, introducing us and educating us on the Pallmann Spider. Definitely, if anybody out there wants to see one, try one out, you can definitely get in contact with the fine people at Pallmann or find your nearest Masters Craft distributor, and we'll definitely get you connected and get your hands on one to test it out and see it for yourself. So
absolutely.
RJ, thank you for coming on. Appreciate it.
Steve, thank you very much. Have a great day out there.